Hello Internet, it's Daniel with Driving and Dragons. This is going to be a short one today. What I wanted to do is I wanted to stop in and fill in some blanks. I had a 3-hour sit down with the RPG Pundit on Sunday. Great time. There's very little that he and I disagree with, at least disagree with to the extent that we're going to argue over anything other than nuance. Philosophically especially, we're very closely aligned. So we had a great time having a discussion about everything. We basically talked about everything that's going to piss off people on the TTRPG Twitter space. We talked about politics, we talked about religion, and we talked about safety tools, and we talked about game design and OSR and modern gaming, etc., etc. So basically, if it's something that sets off Twitter, we talked about it. But in there were a few questions for me in the comments that unfortunately we didn't get to just because of the flow of the conversation and everything, and I figured why not? I got the time. I'm going to hop down here and take a look real quick and gather up some of these questions, and we're going to go ahead and talk about them and get those answered just to, be something great. Hopefully every one of these guys is a new subscriber so they can hear what I have to say and get their questions answered. First off, was somebody said, hey, I got a D30, can I play? You can absolutely play. Hit me up, contact me on here, contact me on X. Reach out. I need more playtesters. I need people to be able to fool around with this system and shake out the bugs. It's a bespoke system. It's not D20. It's not powered by the apocalypse. It's not interlock. It's not D100. It's not something that I've already had several game designers out there making games for, and it's been essentially playtested by everybody who's bought something off of Drive-Thru RPG. So I need people to go take these shakedown cruises with it, and I would love anybody who wants to give it a shot to give it a shot. Another question about my D30 system that was in there is, does my intended combat system contribute narrative elements along with crunch? Well, the short answer is yes. But a quick breakdown of how I've got my combat system set up is the crunch is designed to be on the back end. I'm trying to minimize rolling, and I'm trying to minimize the amount of pluses, minuses, and minor adjustments that are made in combat in order to make sure that combat stays quick, intuitive, and free-flowing so that you get that rush and you get that excitement, that action feeling of things being rough, quick, and dirty in combat. So everything boils down. Ranged is simple. It's a matter of rolling a D30, adding your modifiers, and range versus the weapon, just like it is in kind of like a Cyberpunk Red. If I need a 50 to hit a target with this weapon at this range, all I have to do is roll for a 50. If I exceed it by 5, I get my critical hit. If I exceed it by 10, I get my double critical. There's some other modifications that'll be in there. As I stated, my system is not designed to be just a single setting. It's designed to be a toolkit for game masters to customize the rules to fit their setting. So if you want to have kind of a John Woo, Matrix style, you can dodge bullets type situation, I'm going to have some alternative rules in there for bullet dodging and that sort of thing. But the long and short is ranged is super simple. When it comes to melee, that's where the more intricate version happens, but it still boils down to an opposed D30 roll. Both characters roll the D30, or both players roll the D30, or player DM, whatever. Roll the D30, add their modifiers. They have their skills and their attributes. If the two numbers are within 5, that's it. No hits are landed. If one person exceeds the other by 5, they get a hit. If they exceed by 10, they get critical hit. The only real adjustments that can be made are one is shield use. If you're using a shield, you essentially get a second defense only roll. So if I hit you, you get a chance to roll your shield use skill to try and deflect my attack using the attack I already rolled as the difficulty rating. And the only other real modifiers are the choice of the person being attacked. If the person being attacked wants to fight back offensively, it's a 5-5 situation. If the person wants to fight defensively, they can force the attacker to have to beat them by 10, but they're not making an attack in response. So it just kind of shifts that window, that 10 number window, from being a 5 on one side, 5 on the other, who's going to hit, to being a you have to exceed by 10. It just shifts that window over a little bit. And then the same thing when you have like multiple opponents, it just changes the window by 5. The reason we do this is to simulate the idea that doing these things in combat, you have to, there's give and take, but it keeps it all in one roll, and it doesn't do the whole +2, -2, +5 for this, but -2 for that. It doesn't make those kind of modifications. It simply adjusts the window of where that 10 die roll where something happens in combat is, that 10 difficulty rating. Critical hits in melee and critical hits in ranged as well. They're resolved in a single and double critical hit system. You roll a d6. If you exceed by more than 10, so more than 5 you got a hit, more than 10 you got a critical hit. The first range of a critical hit is you roll a d6 and it injures a body part. Head, torso, each arm, each leg, and different effects for those. If you exceed by 15 or better, it severs or severely injures that body part. So like for the torso, it's essentially it's almost an instant kill in most cases. Armor, all armor does is mitigate damage. So the benefit for advancing your skill with a weapon is twofold. One, it literally enhances your defense. It prevents you from having the lucky blow that cuts your knee in half and chops your leg off. It prevents you from being as easy to hit as your skill with the weapon and your skill in combat increases. The second thing it does is it makes it more likely for you to succeed with that higher damage. You get a situation where the classic, high level fighter, which my game system has no levels, but high level, high advanced fighter goes up against the simple goblin, and in D&D you're talking about there's a 5% chance the goblin gets a critical hit, but who cares? I got so many hit points that the critical hit barely moves the needle. And unless I roll a 1, I'm hitting the goblin, and I'm eventually going to not roll a 1, and my minimum damage is going to cut him in half. In this system, that goblin still has a chance with that 30-sided die giving you such a wide range of a roll, and 40 being the maximum possible modifier on any attack roll. That goblin still has a chance to do something serious. And realistically, in most cases where things are not super maxed out and there's not a lot of magic and stuff to really push things up, even an experienced fighter, that goblin could luck up and bust him in the throat. That critical hit also gives you another narrative element as well. So the single roll gives the game master what they need to describe an entire exchange between two combatants. And the critical hits tell you what the actual effect is beyond just you do more damage. So hopefully that kind of fleshes out the whole intended combat system narrative elements thing. I was asked about my position on Catholicism. I believe it was asked earlier, but it wasn't asked. It wasn't typed out very well, so it was kind of ignored as like, what are they talking about? Somebody asked me, they were a set of a contest, and they wanted to ask me about my position on Catholicism. And basically, my position on Catholicism is this. I was baptized as set of a contest. I had serious issues with John Paul II. I have serious issues with Vatican II. I believe that the core of Vatican II is undermining Catholicism, because Vatican II was put in place to make Catholicism more accessible to the modern person, and that's not what it's supposed to do. That is going in and saying we are going to dumb down our standards. We are lowering our standards and taking things that are important and changing them simply to make them sell better. That is not what we're supposed to do. So I had serious problems there. When Benedict came in and started moving things back towards the traditional and started accepting things like the Society of St. Pius X and Society of St. Pius V and whatnot, and accepting them back into communion with the church. I went into communion with the church mainly because I felt that Benedict was moving things back in the right direction. As of right now, I still consider myself, it's hard to say, I'm kind of in the gray area. I practice virtually every traditional element that a set of a contest would. I attend SSPX Mass, and I do believe that if we're going to save the church, we're not going to do it by standing in the corner with our arms crossed, yelling about the seat being empty. We're going to do it from within the church. But I still consider the seat to be empty. I don't think I think Benedict was close to a legitimate pope. I think he probably was a legitimate pope, but we saw what they did when they had one. They basically pushed him out and pushed him to retire. And then we got Francis, who is the worst pope at least in modern history. So I hope that kind of clarifies my position there. Somebody said, in most cases that people are doing devils wrong and it might be worth doing a video on. That's 100% correct. I'm actually going to do something that is along those veins. I will be producing that You're Doing It Wrong video, mainly because I think people do lawful evil in general wrong, probably because most people do alignment wrong. That's going to be a more D&D centric video, but just doing villains wrong in general, I think, is going to help make that more of a system agnostic video. All right, and then somebody asked me about a transmission in a bathtub. The reason that came about is RPG Pundit always asks about non-nerdy habits and what other nerdy habits you have. We went over mine, and he declared that out of the 3 people who've been on his interview show so far, I am by far the least nerdy, and that's mainly because my hobbies include, I do play a little bit of video games, but mainly I watch sports, I work on cars, and working on cars is certainly not a super nerdy habit or hobby according to most people. So I made the comment that unless you've got a carburetor torn apart on your nightstand, you shouldn't be considered less nerdy than me. And somebody had asked, what if you have a transmission in your bathtub? I would say if you've got a transmission dismantled in your bathtub, 1, you're single, because I don't think there's a wife on the planet who would accept that. And 2, yeah, I think that qualifies. I've never been one to build engines inside the house. Usually that's what garages and work areas are for. Just because, oil is a real bitch to get out of a carpet. And a lot of those things are kind of toxic to cats. And when you have as many cats as I do, that becomes a real problem, because my wife and I do have a 501c3 foundation that raises money for the medical needs of feral cat colonies and severe medical cases for people's pets. That would be Sebastian's House Community Cat Foundation. You can find it on Facebook. Anyway, that was the questions that were there. I'm going to come back with a You're Doing It Wrong and some more world building videos here soon. And who knows, maybe some more drama will pop up in the tabletop role-playing game sphere that I can comment on, get some of that cheap clickbait and hate bait clicks. But otherwise, tell your friends, like, share, and subscribe. Nothing helps more than you sharing the video on your social media, hitting the like button, and making comments to interact with it. And hey, if you hate my guts, make sure you tell me you hate me in the comments section. Make sure you downvote the video, because interactions are interactions. And I'll see you guys next time.